Back when I was a kid, we would sometimes play pretend Pokemon at school. We weren't allowed actual Pokemon cards at school because they got banned, as the other kids would rip off and steal cards off the younger kids. There weren't really any rules to the pretend Pokemon game we would play. It was just a weird little kid thing to do. So it wasn't uncommon for someone's Bulbasaur to know an ability it shouldn't. Or when that one time that old mate Oscar decided that his Gyarados had a machine gun. Had I known more about Pokemon back then, I would have claimed bullshit for the sole fact that Gyarados just doesn't have any arms. Now, I suspect this wasn't a unique experience to my school, because if I go to Google Images and type Pokemon with guns, this happens. So the developers at Pocketpair decided to take this a few steps further and actually make a whole game based on the concept Pokemon with guns. Now, when Palworld was announced, I have to be honest and say, it piqued my interest. So I sent an email off to the developers and asked for a review code, and I never heard back. Which I don't really blame them for doing. I'm a relatively small channel, and it's probably not worth it for them to send me a code. So I just decided to wait, like everyone else. So I've put about 15 hours into Palworld over the past weekend, and I think I can honestly say it's The thing that surprised me the most when I launched Palworld is the fact that it's more akin to something like Ark, Survival Evolved, than it is to an actual Pokemon game. And I say more akin, but Palworld borrows very heavily from Ark. Things like the technology tree, the way the character creator works, hot and cold system, the way you spend points on your character stats when you level up, and how unfinished the game feels. Now, when I review an early access game, I always like to ask myself, is there a foundation of a good game here? And I think, yeah, kind of. The game as a whole, I feel, is very underbaked, and it is very hard to tell what is meant to be a feature of the game and what is a placeholder that will be changed in the future. But I don't want to review a game based on what it could become, because it could really become anything, especially this game. What Palworld is currently is a really mixed bag. For every good thing I can say about this game, I can think of a negative. And that's kind of how I felt playing this game. Every time I see something go, oh, hey, that's kind of neat, I'd see something else that would make me go, oh, that's kind of lazy and bad. For example, the map is really big and there's a lot to explore, but there are tons of repeated assets and huge stretches of the map that are open fields that just feel lifeless. The power design is hugely varied and they are all distinctly unique. But their battle AI is just really bad, especially if they have melee or movement abilities. The PAL and base management is really cool, but the repetitive sounds they make while carrying out tasks almost drove me insane. The game is fine, and as long as the power designs don't get the developers sued by Nintendo, then I can even see this game becoming good. But that isn't what I think the game is right now. So what works and what doesn't work? To start off, I found myself very underwhelmed by the first half hour to an hour of Palworld. The game starts as every single other early access survival game starts. Hitting wood, picking up stones, making a crafting table, etc, etc. The game gives you a list of things to do as a tutorial to get you going, and also info dumps a bunch of guides that I don't think anyone read or will read, just in case you get stuck. But it wasn't until I had actually started my first base and was building something when my sheepy pal came over and started helping me with it, did I really start finally getting into the game. Something about having this sheep do its thing and being so happy about finishing its task, it was just super cute. It flicked a switch in my brain, I could feel myself getting sucked in. PAL and base management is probably the best part of the game. Probably because it is one of the very few systems that actually feels like it has any depth to it. Having certain pals being able to do only certain tasks, and then having individual randomized traits is pretty good. It's not revolutionary by any means, but it works. And it is a good foundation for the game to work off of. It's also what I think to be the least buggy part of the game. I've had friends who said that their pals have gotten stuck on things and unable to feed themselves and died, but I haven't actually experienced any of that myself. So far, my experience with base management has been very good. But it's when I venture outside the base is when the cracks of the game really start to show. Let's start off with the world. It's huge. In fact, it's probably way too huge, but we'll get to that. For its size though, the game has extremely good performance. I experienced almost no slowdowns or stutters or frame drops. The game runs super well. And I think part of the reason it does run super well is due to the fact that there isn't much in the world itself. Sure, there are tons of different powers scattered across the place, but they don't do anything. It doesn't look like they inhabit the world. It looks like they were placed there. And the art style of the powers is so drastically different to the landscapes that it doesn't even look like they would belong in the world anyway. Coming back to the world size, it is just way too big. Now, I could probably forgive this if the developers are not planning on expanding the size of the world in the near future, and are going to focus on filling in the one they have and really expanding on the detail. Because the further I go into this game, the more I see it repeating itself. The biggest offender is this fucking Pride Rock looking landscape. The first one I saw of this was cool. The 20th one I saw was not. Especially seeing as there are usually eggs or collectibles on top of every single one of them. So climbing them goes from interesting and exciting to extremely tedious. Now, the battle AI in this game, as I already mentioned, is just really atrocious. It's not really satisfying to throw your pal down and have it fight something else. Also, why can't I just target an enemy for my pal to attack with middle mouse or something? Like, the commands are just tell them to attack what I'm attacking or just be aggressive in general. It would just be much easier if I could press one button to command to attack a certain enemy. It's really strange. Like, middle mouse is not being used for anything. And look, the only time I feel like where the AI fights and it looks good is when there are multiple AI fighting each other, because the chaos really does kind of mask the terribleness of it. I will say though that the boss NPCs are much better designed than the regular ones by a fair margin. Except for this one water boss lizard that I versed that wouldn't stop trying to run away. It was kind of bad, but whatever. Oh, and I almost totally forgot about this. The movement in this game is pretty slow. If you slide downhill, you go like 10 times faster than peak running speed, and it's just kind of insane, and I love it. I don't know why it's like this, but you can also jump and glide, and then you keep the momentum, and you just like zoom around the place. Surely this isn't intentional, right? And listen, none of the gripes that I have with this game totally kill my enjoyment of it, but every little thing that I find like this is gradually grating it away. And I imagine I'll probably stop playing this game sometime soon due to these things. But what I do find is that this game is a very chill game to just play. It's one of very few games that I feel like I can just have like a TV show on the side and only half pay attention to the game and still kind of enjoy it. Overall, I do not think this game deserves the 93% positive rating it has on Steam. But I do think its popularity and positive reception really speak to the dissatisfaction people have with the current state of the Pokemon franchise. And I can see why people like this game. I just don't think it's quite there for me yet. While I don't know for certain if it will get to that point, I will say that Palworld launched in a much better state than Arc did. And given its immense popularity at launch, the developers should have the funds to really beef up development on this game and make it into a truly great game. I have hope. That's all I really have to say about Palworld, and while I had a lot of negatives to say about the game, I do not hate this game by any means. I kind of feel like a teacher and Palworld is my student, and they're just like not living up to their full potential. But anyways, I'll keep an eye on this game as development continues and make an update video when I think it's appropriate. Until then though, if you're a fan of survival games and not bothered by the usual quirks of early access titles, I can recommend this game. If you like a little more polish on your games, then I'd steer clear for now. One thing you should know is that if you're going to buy this game, because I originally started playing this game through the Game Pass, but went on to find out that the Steam and the Game Pass versions of the game cannot cross-play with each other. And the Steam version of the game also has the ability to play up onto 32-player dedicated servers, while the Game Pass version doesn't. There are also currently no Oceanic dedicated servers at the moment, and I haven't actually been able to find a dedicated server that wasn't super laggy yet. I was rubber banding on a server that I only had 80 latency on. Probably shouldn't happen. Definitely played other games with more latency that felt less laggy than this. I don't know how anyone else is going with these, but that's just been my experience so far. So that's everything I have. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like. Have you played Palworld yet? What did you think? Did you agree with my takes or not? Leave a comment and let me know. Until then, I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye.